Okay, let's start. Um, Hello, Metal3, welcome to the community meeting. Today is Wednesday, 30th of June. And please remember to put your name into the attendee list and also put anything you want to discuss to the agenda. And please remember that this meeting is recorded and will be uploaded into the YouTube channel of the project. And before we start, if we have anyone new in the call, so please go ahead and introduce about yourself. Otherwise, we can start with the very first item, I think, from Jan about adapting BMO to the so it can fit to the new multi-tenancy model from VN, copy VN4. Jan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Nam. Yes, first of all, we have already discussed this topic on Slack. There's link to Slack channel as well, and on that discussion, there's several other discussion topics on kind of related to the same thing. But quickly before we starting to discuss, just for those folks who haven't probably see the discussion, Cluster API has released a new API version, V1 Alpha 4, and they have also changed the multi-tenancy mode or model in their new API. So we would like to discuss how we handle this in Metal3, especially how in this session, let's kind of try to concentrate the BMO side. How can we support the new multi-tenancy mode coming from the CAPI? And I would like to hear some ideas. We have, like I said, we have already discussed quite quite a lot in Slack. So please go ahead, whoever want to start, Mile maybe, or Dimitri, or anyone who, and thanks for being so active about this. Is there any hands raised?
Hi, Andrea speaking. Yeah, would like to add a point that has been somehow raised. The topic, anyhow, is pretty large and incidentally popped out in a moment where in different threads this problem started to be analyzed under various forms. Recently, we have introduced the ability to BMO to watch over all the namespace, which is definitely one of the use cases that could be relevant. But also from the Slack discussion, other people raise different use cases. So definitely, I think that this topic could deserve a dedicated discussion. So I think that probably could be better to have a dedicated discussion group on it, maybe on having also a weekly basis dedicated meeting as we did for other initiatives in order to try to deep dive all the possible nuances of the problem that could be different.
Yeah,
That's my
yeah,
point.
yeah. I kind of agree that we probably need to further discussion, but uh, Dimitri, you were pointing out that because we kind of what we discussed earlier on a Slack, we kind of have a couple of options in BMO level, like running the BMO and Ironic per namespace, and you were referring that the problem might be that if we're running multiple ironic instances in the same cloud, and problem is coming from especially during the PIX booting. But do we have any other really big issues on going that way? And if we do, what are those? Do you have any other cases that might fail if we're running multiple ironic into the same cloud?
I'm not sure about failing, but the resource footprint is also going to be quite huge.
Okay, and then there was also Mal was asking on Slack, is it possible that the BMO might be able to, multiple BMOs might be able to talk or communicate with a single ironic on a cluster? Do we see any kind of things that might not be good to go that way? Does anybody have any ideas so far? Is there some
Given that so far we didn't yet define it exactly the requirements of the multi-tenancy, because as per the official definition provided by the CAPI, it's just the ability to handle multiple credentials. I would like also to define it better. No? When watching overall, the namespace is handling the credentials in different namespaces. No? Apart the fact that there is a local cache, but so maybe that's already sufficient. I don't know. I would like to define better what are exactly the CAPI requirements, so that we could map it to the current situation and understand if there is any gap or not. I wouldn't say that BMO is already ready for multi-tenancy, but definitely we did some changes that went in that direction, and maybe it's just a matter to expand them a little bit.
Yeah, I would like to add.
Please go on.
To add a bit on your point, like Andrea, because that's really something that is important to understand here, is that we are at the moment like presenting this problem as tied, right? Like this BMO needs to support multi-tenancy because CAPI requires it, but that's not actually that tied. In V1, in CAPM3 V1A4, we made the decision to bundle BMO as part of the Cluster API Metal3 provider, but there's always the option to take it out. Of course, it's going to be a bit more like rocky in the way we support it, because to deploy CAPM3 via cluster cutoff, then we would need all this BMHCRD to be in place. But there's still an option to like completely decouple it and then leave it up to the like operator, like whoever is managing the cluster, to actually deploy bare metal operator, and then they could do it, whether they do it in single namespace or multiple namespace, then it doesn't even matter from the cluster API point of view, like, because we would take it out of the whole cluster API provider Metal3. So this whole discussion about bare metal operator itself, like the multi-tenancy in bare metal operator, I think this is aiming at giving us an idea of what's the direction where we're going, and then once we know this, we can make a decision whether we want to take bare metal operator out of CAPM3 or if we want to keep it in. So just to remind a bit why we moved it in, it was really to simplify the management of the via cluster couple of the target cluster, because that by bringing BMO in, everything was deployed as part of CAPM3, including the CRDs and the bare metal operator itself. And then the pivoting was automatically taken care of because BMO was moved along via the chain of owner references. If we take it out, this will not be the case. So there will be some additional handling needed to keep supporting this kind of features, but at least we would be decoupling the BMO pieces from the CAPI and the requirements of Cluster API.
Yeah, good point, Mile. And in general, I think the previously CAPI was kind of supporting the idea that if we need to have multiple this multi-tenancy, we just kind of generate the provider per namespace. But now they want to kind of infrastructure providers to follow the idea that we only have a single provider that is able to manage different credentials. So like Miles said, at least from the CAPM3 point of view right now, it feels like a right thing to do. Once again, move the BMO outside, but we don't want to take that step before we are really discussing this and how we really handle after that if we're running CAPM3 without BMO, how we handle the multi-tenancy from there on. We only have one running CAPM3, but we still need to kind of figure out how we really support this multi-tenancy also in BMO, if I'm correctly mistaken.
One thing that I think I might not have made clear is that even if we decouple it from the Cluster API itself, there is still probably going to be a need to get this multi-tenancy in place, not only like just to be able to support like multiple namespace and different resources managed by different people, but also because of how the Kubernetes itself works, right? Like now, if you want to introduce webhooks, there needs to be only one controller that answers for the webhook. And if you want to run BMO with different versions in different namespaces, and like this gets very complicated, and it's basically the same thing that Cluster API has been trying to solve. So we're going to have to go in a direction where we're going to support multiple namespaces, maybe with different versions, different of the CRD or different version of the controllers. But there will be still like the same basic needs as we have for Cluster API.
Does anyone have any ideas from there? I really would like to hear the opinions from the Red Hat side. That do you have any ideas or what could we do? So we have a kind of a not multiple but couple of quite big things to kind of figure out in BMO level.
And I think it would be also very interesting to hear the opinion of the downstream consumers of CAPM3. Like if there are some people from Airship here, or if you're just using like Metal3, then please provide some feedback how you see like your use cases and how this multi-tenancy problem fits in your use case. Like, are you expecting to run multiple ironic, multiple bare metal operator in different namespaces? Like how are you, like, what are your expectations with regard to Metal3?
So if you like, I can briefly describe what we're doing in OpenShift, which is not really relevant to what you're doing with CAPM3, but I can describe it anyway. So basically, at the start, we had the bare metal operator being deployed by the machine API operator, which is basically the operator that was installing the early version of the cluster API that we use in OpenShift. And eventually we found that was a mistake, mostly for a kind of internal just code arrangement reasons. Like that was handled by a different team. So our team, every time we wanted to change something, had to get reviews from that team. So what we ended up doing was building a separate operator that deploys the bare metal operator. And that operator is managed by the cluster version operator, which means it's basically part of the OpenShift payload. So every OpenShift cluster gets that. And the other thing is the OpenShift installer doesn't use the cluster API. So the combination of those two things means we don't need to worry about pivoting. So we don't have the problem that upstream has when kind of using the cluster API to deploy to a generic Kubernetes cluster. So that's why I say our experience is not necessarily relevant for the question that's here. The other thing is we do have requirements for a kind of multi-tenant deployment where we have like a hub cluster that's deploying multiple spoke clusters. So it's like effectively tenant clusters. And in my opinion, the ideal way to handle that would be using a single ironic and a single bare metal operator with splitting up the API, decomposing it so that the parts for that would be handled by an administrator, someone who's in charge of the hardware, separate from the parts that are handled by the cluster API or an end user or whatever provisioning machine for a particular tenant. And you'll have seen the proposal I had written up for that, but obviously that has not been implemented yet. So what we're doing for now is we're running one bare metal operator, one ironic, and the bare metal operator is listening on all namespaces. So I believe that there's a CLI flag that's in the upstream repo, so you can make it listen on all namespaces. So that's kind of our interim measure. I know on Slack there was someone mentioning a use case where they need multiple ironics because they're running in different data centers. We have not attempted to do anything like that yet. Mostly we're using virtual media if we're deploying remote stuff, so it can all run from one ironic. So that's kind of the state of things in OpenShift. Sandy, do you have anything to add to that?
I would have a question for you, Zane, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
If you're running then a single metal operator instance, this would mean then that the all the consumers, let's call them, like in the upstream case, like Cap'n3, need to be supporting that exact version, right? So that there can't be multiple version of Cap'n3 with different requirements on the bare metal operator running on different namespaces.
Yeah, that's true.
How do you tackle this problem?
So again, in OpenShift, it's not an issue because the machine API, which again is kind of a very ancient version of the cluster API, or part of it, it is kind of built into OpenShift. So everything's kind of versioned in lockstep. You get whatever version was in that OpenShift release, and they all work together. So yeah, version skew isn't, I mean, beyond kind of upgrading from one release to another, we don't worry about version skew. So it's not clear to me under what circumstances you would actually need to be running different versions. I guess this is.
Well, I don't know if there's exactly a requirement, but it was something that was under the CAPI, like with cluster control, basically you could deploy different versions in different namespaces. So you would have basically different version of the provider. And so if we go with a single version and we say like we won't support version skew anyways, we can either like ensure that whatever is consuming the metal operator upstream is basically you having this minimum version of BMO, and that we would match it and make sure that BMO is always backwards compatible to and especially with the CRDs for the consumers to be able to just run with pretty much any version that fulfills a minimum requirement, or then just fix the versions of the consumer so that it's like they're all the same everywhere. But in that case, we kind of lose a bit the versatility that Cluster API was allowing.
Yeah, so I think a separate discussion that we also need to have is it is time to stop changing the bare metal host CRD without bumping the version number. I think we need to start versioning that, at least in part because to get to incubating status with CNCF, we're going to have to do that. So that's a separate discussion, but one we need to have, and I think that may solve this problem to some extent.
I'm kind of glad that you brought that out, because I was also asking at some point it would make sense to have a versioning, but like you said, it's a different discussion. But I'm totally plus one with the idea of having the versioning in BMO as well. When it comes to this topic, then is there anyone, like Mai was asking, any other users of cap-and-trees? Is there anyone from Airship who would give something about the how they expect to cap-and-tree, or how they are expecting this multi-tenancy to be handled?
Hi, this is Arvinder. I work with Airship Community. Yeah, from Airship's perspective, we haven't really considered the multiple data center approach, where multiple data centers are managed by a single management cluster. We're currently focused on a single data center, but within that, we obviously have many clusters that need to be managed. So yeah, no hard requirements as of yet from the Airship side on this. I think if we can sort of work out the details on how to support multi-tenancy as CAPI requires it should be fine.
Okay. Can I quickly ask before I lose the idea? What about the running BMO in the as part of the cap-and-tree, or out from cap-and-tree? Does it really matter from Airship point of view?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was thinking about that myself. Yeah, today it's obviously nice that when we pivot, everything just gets moved automatically. There might be some consequences of that if now, for example, the BMH resources are not being moved. But also, the cluster API move is evolving as well. I think they added the ability to move non-standard things through annotations, I believe. So I wonder if there will be some other workarounds that we can potentially leverage for that.
Yeah, I currently actually planning to test that, taking BMO out and see what happens when we pivot. I was planning to, or actually working with the testing the annotations. So that is also something that give more overview what we can done. But like, do you have any hard requirement to keep BMO in?
Not that I know of, but I can go double check. Not that I know of.
that is good to hear. So at least we don't have any strong opinions to, for example, keeping the BMO in the cabin tree. But yeah, we definitely need more time to discuss this this matter. What we gonna do in BMO? I would just like to hear any ideas. Should we have a some a smaller group or obviously open group for everyone want to join, but to really concentrate these other things that we didn't discuss here. I had a quick chat today with Andre, and he said it would be good to have also kind of a separate discussion related to all the topics that are that might be need to be considered uh, when we and if we need to do some changes in BMO. We can
Yeah,
also yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
so I would like to suggest that it's an open one, because before we move away from this discussion, I also wanted to highlight the point that Dimitri added, which was something that was kind of felt like a big design decision we felt we had to make when we were considering multi-tenancy in, or we are considering multi-tenancy in OpenShift using CAPI. So basically this question about, are we running several ironics, then are we using the multi-tenancy feature that's native to Ironic, which we are currently not using in the interface between BMO to Ironic. So I think since it's basically a collaborative effort with people having different levels of expertise on different related topics, I think we can keep it open. I think that's also a big problem to consider, the one that Dimitri highlighted.
Yeah, good to hear. And so you are working some sort of a. Are you already working with multi-tenancy in Ironic, or did I understand right?
So I'm in the OpenShift team. So
OpenShift,
I
yeah.
don't understand the multi-tenancy in Ironic completely, but if someone from who knows better about that can talk about it, that would be awesome.
Yeah, sure. So for Ironic, actual multi-tenancy in Ironic itself is pretty simple, and it needs a bit of work to make it more usable for specifically a standalone, that is Metal3 case. But the idea is we have a notion of ownership for nodes. So nodes may have an owner, and they may also have more sophisticated access control, but I don't think it's in scope for Metal3 because that requires another service to be deployed. What I was thinking about, we could use one Ironic, and we could use this feature to make sure that different BMO instances only see and access their own nodes. That's not strictly required. We can just make sure BMO interacts with Ironic in a careful way, but that would be nice. It would allow different Ironic credentials, nice separation. But as I said, it will require a bit of, but still some feature work on Ironic side.
So you're saying that multiple BMOs might be able to communicate with the single Ironic, and we can kind of make sure that tenants or the users have access to the certain servers or bare metal hosts on that cluster. Did I understand right?
This is correct. It's a nice idea. I'm not sure that's something we should be looking for the first version of this work. Because in the end, we can do it with one Ironic, just with one Ironic. So we can have multiple BMOs accessing Ironic with the same user. And that would be also just fine, as long as in BMO we track, and I think we do track that, which nodes BMO manages.
Yeah.
What I would advise against is duplicating Ironic for the reasons I mentioned. First, with Pixie is going to be a disaster. Like, it's just not going to work probably.
Okay.
And second, currently Ironic means not just Ironic itself, but also MySQL, HTTPD, DNS mask. If you're going to duplicate all these, the resource footprint is going to be pretty insane.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, good point there. If you think that that is so, then it's kind of a sound, not good, not necessarily promising, but it would be good idea if multiple BMOs might be able to communicate with the single ironic. At least that was the kind of option that we already written down on those notes that we have in our internal meeting. So yeah, but how it go from here now? Do you have any ideas? Do we need a separate group to really investigate this? I would rather see this to go further quite soon. So I wouldn't like to get into the situation that we kind of over design it in next couple of months. Or of course, if we need to do a big rework in BMO, we need that time. But it would be nice to get more ideas, because to be honest, I'm not that seasoned with BMO and ironic and to be fully understand which way to go. At least if we get any ideas, what would be the good idea to go for, it would be really useful here, I think. Any ideas?
From this whole discussion, it's clear that we need much more time to nail this multi-tenancy issue with Demeter operator. But at the same time, we have this CAPI uplift that comes really soon. So I think maybe the safest bet for us right now is just to take BMO out of CAPM3, so that we do not have this requirement, this dependency anymore, so that we can proceed with the uplift on the CAPM3 side and have CAPI v1a4 like support. And that will buy us a lot of time to see how we want to handle it from the BMO point of view, because then we are quite free to deploy it the way we want. Even like anyone deploying it could deploy it one instance for the whole cluster, for example, or one instance per namespace. That is already like possible, basically. So I think that would allow us to fulfill the contract on the CAPI side, and then take further this discussion and really like take the time we need to discuss multi-tenancy in BMO and how everything plays. But then we need to make sure that it doesn't impact anybody in a negative way that we would take it out. So I know you're doing some investigation work to figure out this pivoting problem. But I think in parallel we should send a question around, or to reach out in the whole community to see if anybody would be badly impacted if we take BMO out of CAPM3, and with a workaround for the pivoting that you would be investigating now.
Yeah, good idea. And if anybody is now strongly against this, I would like to hear that. And that's for sure that we probably need to, I will send the message to our channel and ask if there are any users who are really against. But I agree, we probably should take the BMO outside the CAPM3 so we can support the new CAPI v1a4.
It's probably going to be much easier to reach a decision and a consensus on the CAPM3 side without involving anything on the BMO multi-tenancy part. So it would be great to have like a document that exactly details what does it mean to take the metal operator outside of the of CAPM3, and what would be needed to be handled by whoever is deploying it, especially to keep the pivoting working properly, so that then like a decision can be reached, or a consensus with the whole community.
Yeah, so did you consider the other option where we keep BMO as part of CAPM3 and then basically allow BMO to watch multiple namespaces?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
this is like something that was considered. It's a bit tricky in the way that if we want to support both v1a4 and v1a5, it's different. Sorry, like I meant like CAPI v1a3 and CAPI v1a4. That means CAPM3 v1a4 and v1a5 is a bit different deployment methods with different like arguments and all that, but that can be it can be overcome, right? It's not a big deal. It's the problem is more like if you want to have multiple like some of the scenarios that were mentioned where you would want to have multiple ironics in different namespaces. In that case, we wouldn't be really able to achieve that, keeping it as is now.
So what I meant was, before we make that decision, we are looking at taking BMO out of CAPM3 as an immediate reaction, right? So the reason I'm bringing it up is, let's say we figure out all the other BMO and ironic interactions, and then we come to a conclusion that we can add BMO back into CAPM3. I don't know the answer yet, but let's suppose that's a route we end up taking. Then we are basically communicating first, saying that we are taking it out and then we are adding it back in. So the people who are using this downstream will have to adjust to two very different paths. So I don't know what views people have on this topic, because we haven't ruled out the fact yet that the BMO could be added back to CAPM3, right?
No, not at all. But then we probably need some changes on BMO, and I think yeah.
If we keep BMO in, we need to support the CAPI v1 alpha 4 requirements, and that is this multiple like credentials to manage multiple. Well, basically handling a situation where you would have multiple ironic in the pictures if they wouldn't be local, for example. Like, let's say someone is not using an ironic deployed on the cluster where BMO is sitting, and they have like the ironics deployed locally, like wherever their target clusters are. Then you would need to have one BMO instance that would be able to talk to different ironics wherever they are. Like, that's just an example right now out of the blue, but just to give an idea of what we would need to support in BMO to be able to keep this binding right now.
So I think Dimitri suggested that what we should be doing there is having multiple ironic conductors, but only one API and database, which I don't think we have. I don't think that would work out of the box with bare metal operator today, but like that's certainly a feature worth working on, I would think.
Then what if the user is not using Metal3's ironic? They have their own way to do things, and there's an ironic API that ironic standalone somewhere for one target cluster, and then another one for another target cluster. This scenario, we would need to tackle this scenario in running a single BMO instance capable of talking to those two if we want to keep the binding.
Honestly, I cannot imagine why somebody would do that. Like, I have not in my 8 years of experience heard of people who had several ironics, unless they really seriously geographically distributed, or really like geographically and client distributed. Okay, I've heard about a person who used several ironics, but they were for completely different clients. So that wouldn't be even like one cluster, one Kubernetes or anything. I don't object to supporting this use case, but maybe it's not the use case we should start with, or even consider in the first iteration. Because I think right now they don't support that either.
Well, actually, we do, because there's different instances of BMO that are deployed with CAPI v1a3. So each namespace has its own BMO that is configured to talk to a specific, well, to whatever ironic you pointed to. So it could be a single ironic for all of the instances, or it could be different ones. We don't know if anybody is using it this way, of course, but it's supported. If we go in that direction, I agree that it probably would be something that is a bit exotic. So there probably won't be many people using it, but we need to be clear that we are dropping like part of this support of some use cases when we do the shift to v1a4 if we go in that direction.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Maybe it even makes sense, especially since BMO doesn't support ironic conductor groups, which are our upstream way of separating ironic, subdividing ironic into separate networks.
Yeah, I mean, I would support adding support for conductor groups in BMO. Like, I think that's a sensible feature to have. I do think the webhook thing is kind of overblown. Like, we don't actually have a webhook yet. And even when we do, like, okay, it will do strange things if you deploy different versions of BMO and different namespaces and expect them all to work with one webhook, but you can always not do that, you know? If you want to do this really weird exotic thing, like, there's going to be some workarounds you have to deal with, and that's can be one of them. Like, I don't think that's the end of the world. I'm sure the people doing it will disagree, but
I agree with that. I would still, though, think that going for decoupling BMO and CAPM3 would be the safest route at this point.
Yeah,
because it doesn't block us into any direction. Wherever we're going with the multi-tenancy afterwards, that's just a matter of how do you deploy BMO, and you don't. There's less requirements on the BMO side and more versatility on the CAPM3 side. That, like, you deploy it the way you want.
I mean, as I said, we ended up decoupling that as well, and that was the right move for us. If there is a way to make the pivot work with it decoupled, then I think that makes a lot of sense. The other thing I would say is I haven't really been involved in the cluster API group, but it's like, I think at least when we started, we're the only people kind of doing this, where the as well as the cluster API provider, the API that the cluster API provider is calling is another Kubernetes API, namely the bare metal host. But I think we were the first cluster API provider to do that, and all of the others, at least at the time, are, the cluster API provider calls directly to the cloud. I don't think we're going to be the last people to do this. Like, I think if you were writing the AWS cluster API provider right now, you would probably use the Kubernetes resources for the AWS API to set stuff up rather than communicating directly to AWS. At least I would. I would expect that's the direction which more things will tend to go in. So I think if you showed up at the cluster API and said, hey, we have this use case, like, we need to do pivoting of not just the cluster API provider resources, but also these other resources that we're managing. We need better ways of making that happen. it's not a uniquely bare metal thing. It's something that other cluster API providers could potentially use. Let's figure out a way that makes sense for everybody. I think that's kind of a reasonable way you could approach them, and maybe we could get better support.
Actually, I think that's already
happen. It's already happening.
This part is probably already happening. It's just Jan will test it to verify that everything works as expected.
They have annotation for the other resources than the provider resources, so we should be able to pivot everything. But yeah, like I said, I've been working on to get BMO first out from the Metal3 just for the testing purposes, and now probably tomorrow and the rest of the week I'll be able to test that pivoting, because I think the only thing possible problem comes within the pivoting or moving all the resources from management cluster into the workflow cluster. So I need to verify that everything works. I'm expecting it to work, but we probably need to do something also in Metal3 maybe, but I'm probably more wise till the end of the week.
Sorry guys to interrupt, but maybe can we move on the other agenda points? Otherwise, I'm not sure we could make in time to discuss all the today's agenda.
Yeah, thanks for discussion. It was really helpful, and it's nice to hear that this is something that we definitely need to work more. But yeah, at least from my point, we can continue.
Okay, so that was a very nice discussion. Thank you. So the next item, I think from Leonard, but I think it has been solved by Dimitri. So Leonard, do you want to talk about that, or
no, it's
we
fine.
move on?
Sorry, yeah, it's fine. We can move on. It's already solved.
Yeah, sure. So the next item from Chai. So please go ahead.
Hello everyone. My name is Chaitanya, but you guys can call me Chai. So regarding the point here, we actually have deployed the bare metal operator in our local environment, and we have actually a custom use case to use the UFI HTTPS boot interface instead of using the default PXE1, which is supported by the bare metal operator. So what I wanted to discuss here today was if it would be possible to make the configurations for the vendor driver configuration as well customizable, so that if somebody has some specific use cases, they could probably specify it as a config file, and the bare metal operator can adapt accordingly.
I think your specific use case was just solved by another driver.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I think your specific use case of using ILO HTTP boots can be just solved by having another driver created.
Okay. And one more thing which we also were doing was that we also didn't want to use the RAID interface for this particular for this particular driver. So even for that, you would suggest creating a separate driver config and just using that then a custom one.
I think so. There have been a bit of a back and forth on the RAID feature. I think the last thing that was proposed is if you do not have RAID configuration set at all, so it's new, nothing is done about RAID, no matter which RAID interface you have. Zane, do you remember?
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to want to do, but it's not implemented yet.
Yeah, because I guess for one of the so we are using HP servers right now, and I guess for this we use this ILO configuration, and for that I guess for ILO 5 it was changed to use the ILO 5 RAID interface instead of using no RAID, And because of that, we had to like create a fork again of the bare metal operator and change this. So what we were thinking was that if all this could be customizable somehow according to our needs, then we don't have to create forks every time and make those changes, but instead somehow make the operator itself adapt based on the use case.
Yeah, so the RAID situation, I actually think we should switch all the drivers back to no RAID until we've fixed this problem. And I thought that's what we were going to do, but only the Fujitsu one got switched back. So yeah, we should fix that upstream until we've resolved the issue and make it work like Dimitri said, where if you don't specify RAID config, it won't do anything. In terms of custom drivers, you can always write another one, another BMC driver. Those don't have to be, you can register those from outside. So if you create a fork, you can add your own BMC driver and just register it. That's probably the best way if you want to kind of customize something in there. But yeah, I agree the RAID thing needs to be sorted upstream.
Yeah, because the problem is that if we end up using a fork, then we would, whenever we need to like do an update of the bare metal operator itself, we need to like keep rebasing our fork, which is what we don't want to do right now. So that's the idea we had in mind, that if we could somehow like push this upstream itself instead of like maintaining a fork, it would make it easier for us. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts as well. Thank you.
Yeah. So you're saying like each BMC driver would have like a config file that you could edit, that kind of thing?
Yeah, like for example, if so the service which we have right now support UFI HTTPS, and if this is something which we want to use, we can specify the boot interface as UFI HTTPS, and the BMO operator would then choose this as the boot interface and probably run specific tests related to UFI HTTPS itself, because I guess there's some additional configuration as well which we had to like do to support the UFI HTTPS boot interface in the bare metal operator. I guess we had to like add the bootloader URL config and stuff to the bare metal operator to like make it work. So if we could also have the possibility for this in the bare metal operator, then we could kind of like extend it a bit.
Yeah, I'm not against having config files if you want to write something like that. I guess, I mean, the reason they're in Go right now is because there's a lot of stuff that needs kind of code. But I would guess within each one, there's probably some configurable stuff that you could put in a config file. So yeah, I mean, if you wanted to write that, I wouldn't reject it out of hand.
Okay.
Ideally, we'd get something that worked for like every BMC driver rather than just one or two, you know. But yeah.
So just as an action point for myself to take away, so is it okay to say that we could probably extend the bare metal operator upstream to even support the UFI HTTPS boot interface?
This, I
But
think, is the
not by
least
not using a
controversial
config
idea.
file, but just extending the code itself.
I think this is the least controversial idea of what we have discussed, yes.
Okay.
This is absolutely doable upstream without configuration files.
Okay, thank you.
And I think you're not the first person who tries to use this boot interface. I also think they have had some problems with it. But yeah, there's no problem from my side at least supporting it in BMO.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we are done with this item. So the next two item is the review request from Dimitri. So Dimitri, please.
Thank you. Actually, for the first item, I'm relaying a review request from Jacob, who is in Australia, so could not attend. That's something I've started and he continued. It's about running, in this scope, it's about running iDrag reset before we take any actions with a node. Because if there are stuck jobs or any other problems like that, all operations will pretty much fail. The patch itself hasn't had a lot of reviews, but keep in mind that it was recreated from my earlier PRs that did have some reviews. So I'm not sure it's ready for early consensus, but sorry, lazy consensus, but it's definitely ready for reviews. And the second one is the item I have mentioned previously several times. It's a custom deploy method. From our side, the interest is to support CoreOS deployment through CoreOS installer rather than standard IPA, but I can envision other potential use cases for the same thing later on. This patch has had a few review rounds from Zane and Steve. Thank you. I'd appreciate more opinions.
Yeah. So please do review the PR that Dimitri has proposed. And for this one, so you said that it will have like a lazy consensus, right? Or you did propose a lazy consensus?
I have not proposed lazy consensus for the simple reason that nobody so far has reviewed the new version of the patch as Jacob posted it.
Okay, so yeah, please, anyone, please take a look at this proposal. I guess we can move on. The next item is actually from myself. So I have a PR that fixed a bug where we have at the moment, because if we use the reverse proxy to handle the TOS for Ironic Inspector, we need to make the Ironic Inspector open like another port, not the default port 5050, but another port like 5049, because the port 5050 is for the reverse proxy, and then it will forward all the traffic to the like to the port 5049. So that's one problem, and also this PR also solves the problem for the case where we do not want to use the reverse proxy for our inspector. So yeah, so please, anyone please take a look at this PR and give me a review. And also thanks Mitri and Ricardo to give some reviews, and please give some more review to it. Thank you. And the last item from Bob. So please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, this is just this is for the bias setting proposal to get the bias settings from Ironic, allow them to be modified. The first PR is this one to create new CRDs for this one for the bias settings, and one for which actually is a bias registry that we get. We're calling it the schema in terms of BMO. So there's been a couple, I think, some comments on it, but it could read some reviews. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you. So we are out of time. So anyone else who want to discuss any other things? I guess no. So yeah, so let's close the meeting. Thank you very much for the very nice discussion today, and see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.